We ignored the warnings about the Willow Bride. They told us to never enter the grove after sundown, that the trees whispered her name, that the bride still walked, draped in moss and misery, waiting for anyone foolish enough to say I do. We laughed it off like everyone else, until the day we heard her voice whisper our names through the branches. And then we knew the Willow Bride was real. My name is Evan Harrow, and I grew up in a town so small it barely made the maps. Eddington, Maine. A place coated in pine needles, hidden by fog, and forgotten by time. Locals are tight-lipped. The air always feels a little too heavy, and there's one rule passed down like a family curse. Never speak her name. Never go near the Willow Grove. Never stay after dark. Asterisk, asterisk. We were teenagers. Of course, we broke all 3 rules. It started on a dare, like most terrible things do. Me, my cousin Jake, and our friend Lacey were hanging out by Black Creek Road, where the old trails wind into the woods. That's where the grove begins. The one people whisper about, the one the old folks call the bride's path. Jake was the one who said it. $10 says you won't walk the trail to the old willow and back. Lacey smirked. Double it if you say her name out loud. I wish I had laughed and walked away. Instead, I said it. The Willow Bride. The trees rustled, even though there was no wind. We didn't think much of it at first. The woods were creepy, sure, but nothing screamed haunted, just silence and the occasional owl. We walked deeper, flashlights slicing through the trees. The path narrowed, and the air felt damper, colder. Moss coated everything, and strange wooden charms dangled from the branches. Small straw dolls, twine crosses, a wedding veil tied to a branch. That's when we found the clearing. At its center stood a massive, drooping willow, its branches trailing like fingers brushing the dirt. Beneath it was an old stone altar, crumbled, moss-covered, and disturbingly out of place. Lacey pointed her light toward the tree. That looks like a noose. She wasn't wrong. Hanging from one of the higher limbs was a length of frayed rope. Old, weathered, swaying slightly despite the still air. Jake muttered, "Creepy as hell, man." We stood in a triangle of silence. Then something cracked behind us, twigs snapping, slow and deliberate. I turned, scanning with the flashlight, but saw nothing. Then we heard the whispers. Soft. Female. Sad. Don't go. Lacey dropped her flashlight. Did you hear that? Jake forced a laugh. One of you jerks messing with me? But no one moved. Then all the flashlights flickered. Mine went out first. Then Jake's. Lacey screamed as hers blinked and died. We were swallowed by blackness. And then singing. It was faint, like a lullaby from underwater. A woman's voice, cracking and old, humming what sounded like a wedding march. From the direction of the willow. Lacey grabbed my arm. We need to leave. Now. We ran. Branches toward our clothes. I tripped once and swore. I felt something cold brush against my face. We didn't stop until we saw the headlights of my car through the trees. We swore we'd never talk about it again. But she didn't care. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the humming through my window. The next day, Jake didn't show up at school. Then Lacey stopped answering her phone. By the 3rd night, I was the only one left. I went to Jake's house. His mom said he was sick, but wouldn't let me in. I could see him through the upstairs window, sitting stiffly in a chair, staring out into nothing. Eyes wide, unblinking. I visited Lacey's house next. Her parents said she'd gone to stay with an aunt. But her car was still in the driveway, and her bedroom light flickered like it was short-circuiting. I knew something had followed us home. Something from the Willow Grove. That night, I had the dream. I was back in a clearing. The willow swayed in a wind I couldn't feel. The altar was covered in fresh flowers and bones. Atop it stood the bride. She wasn't quite human. Her skin was pale green, bloated like she had drowned long ago. Her dress hung in soggy, moss-covered tatters. Veins bulged from her neck like vines. Her hair was thick and black, writhing like wet rope. And her eyes were filled with centuries of grief. She looked at me and smiled. You said my name. I jolted awake, drenched in sweat, my room filled with the smell of wet earth and roses. The floor was soaked beneath my bed. At the foot of it was a single muddy wedding shoe. I couldn't deny it anymore. We had awakened something ancient, something that remembered its pain. The Willow Bride wasn't a campfire story. She was real, and she was angry. I went back to the trail the next day, alone, but the path had changed. The charms were different now. They were fresh. The twine looked new. There was even a photo nailed to one tree. Jake, eyes blacked out with ink. Then another, Lacey, mouth stitched shut with thread. And finally one of me. I turned and ran, but the woods wouldn't let me go. They twisted on themselves. The trees shifted like they were watching. The whispers followed me, laughing, crying, and then I heard her voice clearer than ever before. You promised me forever. I broke through the tree line just before nightfall. My car was covered in leaves and petals. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even blink, because every time I closed my eyes, I could see her face just inches from mine. Bride's veil floating like mist, mouth whispering, said my name. They say some spirits can't move on until their vows are fulfilled. But what if the bride was never the one who broke them? What if betrayal turned her into something hollow and hateful? And now, she's forcing others to finish what her lover never did. I thought saying her name was just a game. I didn't know I was agreeing to take his place. I didn't go to school the next day. I barely left my room. My phone was full of missed calls and texts from classmates asking where Jake and Lacey were. I didn't reply. How do you tell someone that your friends are being hunted by a ghost bride? When I finally convinced myself to move, it was only to search for answers. I needed to understand who or what the Willow Bride really was. And I needed to know how to stop her. My first stop was the town library. Eddington's library is small and mostly ignored, like everything else in town. But its basement contains old town records, yellowed pages, newspaper clippings, and dusty black and white photos. I asked the clerk if they had anything about Willow Bride legends. She stiffened, didn't even look at me, just muttered, local history. Back shelves. Don't stay past 5. Even the library had a curfew. Back in the records room, I started digging. It took hours of sifting through irrelevant stories, church fundraisers, lost pets, winter storms before I found the name. Eleanor Breyer, a photo from 1883. She was beautiful in a delicate, old-fashioned way. Dark curls, soft smile, eyes full of hope. The caption read, Eleanor Breyer to wed Thomas Harrow on October 21st. Harrow, my last name. I felt the chill creep into my spine. I flipped through more pages. Found an article from a week later. This one had no photo, just bold, black letters. Local bride found dead in Willow Grove. Groom missing. The story was vague. Eleanor had disappeared hours before her wedding ceremony. Her body was discovered the next morning beneath the willow tree. Cause of death, hanging. Thomas Harrow was never found. There were rumors. Some said he ran, others said he was murdered. But the town's consensus seemed to be Eleanor was jilted. She took her own life in grief. But not all believe that. In the margins of the article, in faded pencil, someone had scrawled, she didn't hang herself. She was sacrificed. The Harrow blood cursed the grove. I closed the book, my hands trembling. My ancestor was the groom who vanished. And now I had said her name. That night, the dreams came back. Only this time, I wasn't in the clearing. I was in the church. Candles lined the aisle. 1,000 faceless guests stared at me. My suit itched. My collar tightened. And there, at the altar, stood her. Not the bloated corpse from before, but a beautiful bride. Pale and perfect, until I blinked. Then her smile cracked open into something too wide. Her gown began to rot. Blood spilled from her veil. Her eyes sunk into her skull. "Finish the vows," she rasped. "He left me. You will not." I woke up gasping, and my bedroom mirror had the words "till death" scrawled across it in wet, brown smears. I had to talk to someone. Anyone. I remembered the pencil note in the article and wondered who had written it. After calling around and getting mostly silence or hang-ups, one elderly librarian finally gave me a name. Irene Grafton. Used to be a local historian before folks got scared of her, the woman said. Irene lived on the edge of town, in a crumbling farmhouse with boarded-up windows and vines climbing the porch like claws. She answered the door with a shotgun in her hand and suspicion in her eyes. When I told her my name, Evan Harrow, her face drained of color. "You need to leave," she said immediately. "I need to know about Eleanor." That stopped her. She stared at me for a long time before slowly opening the door wider. Inside, the air smelled of dust, herbs, and mold. Books and jars were stacked in every corner. Candles burned even though it was broad daylight. She was never supposed to be buried in that grove, Irene said, sitting in a creaky chair. That land is old, rotten. Even the natives wouldn't settle near it. They said it swallowed sorrow, that anything buried there came back, twisted. I listened, barely breathing. "Your great-great-grandfather made a deal," she continued. "He wanted to escape the marriage. For money? For another woman? Who knows? But he found someone in the woods, the Willow Hag, and she promised he could disappear if he offered Eleanor instead. He sacrificed her." I whispered. Irene nodded. "She was led to that tree on her wedding night, bound, hung heartbroken, her rage soaked into the land. I felt sick. The family shame curdled in my gut. She was promised a wedding, Irene said, and now, every few generations, she reaches out for one, and the blood of the Harrows always hears her call. I said her name. I muttered. She showed me. She wants to finish the vows. Then she's chosen you, Irene said, eyes wide with fear. You have two choices. Run, and she'll follow you, or return and offer her peace. What kind of peace? Irene didn't answer, just handed me a leather-bound book. Inside were handwritten rites, old protection symbols, and something called the unbinding ritual. At the bottom was a line. Only the willing groom can break the vow, but the price must be paid. I left her house as the sun set. The grove called to me again. My phone buzzed. It was a video message from Lacey's number. Hands shaking, I opened it. It was pitch black, but her voice came through, whispering in terror. She's wearing my dress. Evan, don't let her make me the bride. Then the screen went static. And then one frame, too fast for the eye, of Eleanor's face decaying and grinning. I dropped the phone. She wasn't just choosing me. She was collecting the ones who came with me, who saw her, who spoke her name. And now she had Lacey. I looked back toward the woods. If I didn't return, she'd come for more. When the past calls, sometimes it doesn't want answers. It wants you. I thought uncovering the truth would break the curse. But the Willow Bride doesn't want freedom. She wants a groom, and I was born into her nightmare. I didn't sleep after watching Lacey's message. Her voice, soft, trembling, full of dread, played over and over in my head. She's wearing my dress. I couldn't sit back. Not after everything I'd learned. Not after Irene told me Eleanor was sacrificed by my own bloodline. There was no one else left to face her. Jake was already gone. Now Lacey. And I had invited her by saying that curse name. So I packed the old leather-bound book, a flashlight, a small hunting knife, and a silver ring that belonged to my mother. Something personal, something binding. I didn't know what part would play, but instinct told me I'd need it. Before I left, I wrote a short note on my phone and scheduled it to send in 24 hours. If I don't come back, don't look for me. Burn the willow grove. Salt the roots. Don't speak her name. The woods were unnaturally quiet as I approached the grove. Even the wind felt stifled, as if the forest were holding its breath. As I stepped into the clearing, the air grew colder. The moonlight filtered through the tangled branches above, casting sickly shadows that danced like figures in mourning. The willow tree stood the center, massive, ancient, and wrong. Its branches drooped like arms stretching downward, fingers clawing at the dirt. And tied to the trunk, half slumped and motionless, was Lacey. Her wedding dress was torn and stained, her skin pale. Her eyes fluttered open when she heard me. "Evan," she whispered. I rushed forward, but the moment I crossed a shallow ring of stones surrounding the tree, the ground trembled. The whispers started again. Soft at first, like wine through dead leaves, but then louder. Closer. Accusing. "You left her." She waited. "You broke the vow." And then she appeared. Not just a ghost, a presence. The Willow Bride. Her veil billowed as if caught in some phantom breeze. Her gown, once white, was stained with dirt and blood. Her face was a blend of beauty and horror. Eyes hollow but burning with betrayal. Lips torn yet curved in a grotesque smile. "You came," she said, voice like dead petals falling on glass. "I'm here to end this," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She tilted her head. "He said the same, but he lied. Like you all do. I'm not him." She moved closer without walking, just gliding, as if her feet were bound to the air itself. "No, but you share his blood. And so, the vow remains unfulfilled." From the book Irene gave me, I recited the beginning of the unbinding ritual. The words were in some ancient dialect, but as I spoke them, the grove began to react, branches curling away, the shadows writhing in discomfort. The bride hissed, "No!" Suddenly, the ground cracked. Roots shot from the soil, wrapping around my legs. I dropped to my knees. Lacey screamed, "You promised me." Eleanor shrieked, "You will not run again." Her hand stretched toward me, skeletal and shaking. I reached into my coat and pulled out the ring. "This is my vow," I said, "a promise freely given, not stolen in blood. Let her go. Take me instead." The roots hesitated. The Willow Bride froze. She looked at the ring, and for a second, her face softened. Behind the decay and rage, I saw something human. A woman betrayed. A heart shattered. She moved past Lacey and touched the ring in my hand. And for the first time, she wept. Tears of blood fell from her hollow eyes and hit the soil with a hiss. "You would bind yourself to me," she whispered, "if that's what it takes to free her." She placed her cold, rotted fingers on my chest. "Then say the vows." My mind screamed no, but my mouth spoke. "Not by force, by instinct. I vow to walk beside you in darkness and death until your soul finds rest." The moment I said it, the tree behind us moaned, a deep, guttural sound of wood splintering and earth groaning. The whispers vanished. The air grew still. And then, everything went black. I awoke in the same clearing, but the tree was gone. Only a scorched circle remained where it once stood. Lacey lay beside me, unconscious but breathing. The ring was gone from my hand. So was the book. The sun was rising. They never found Jake. His parents still leave the porch light on, hoping. Lacey doesn't remember much, only flashes. But she avoids the woods now. Doesn't even say the word willow. I've had no dreams since that night. No whispers. No bichins. But sometimes, when I pass a mirror, I see a veil just behind my reflection. And once, just once, I heard her voice again. "You kept your vow, but I am not yet at rest." So maybe I didn't end it. Maybe I just bought time. Maybe the next hero will have to pay again. Or maybe, just maybe, she's waiting for our wedding night. We thought destroying the tree ended the curse. But the Willow Bride was never bound to bark and branches. She was bound to blood. And when you speak her name, she follows. 2 weeks passed since the night at the grove. I convinced myself it was over. that the scorched ground and the silence in my dreams meant she was gone. Lacey started therapy. She tried to piece together what she remembered. Her words hinted at strange rituals, an eerie veil, and the feeling of vines tightening around her ribs. But I didn't tell her what I had done, that I made a vow, that I felt the ring burn into my skin when I closed my eyes, that I saw shadows stretch unnaturally long in the daylight. The more I tried to forget, the more the signs returned. The whispers, the mirrors, the scent of damp earth. Then I saw her in daylight. It started small. The first time, I was walking past an antique shop downtown. I caught a reflection in the glass window beside me, but it wasn't mine. It was a woman, wearing a tattered veil, standing directly behind me. When I turned, no one was there. I stood frozen in front of the glass for several minutes, people walking past as if nothing was wrong. The second time was worse. It happened in my apartment. I woke to the sound of weeping, not from outside, not muffled. It was in my room. I flicked on the lamp, and there she was, standing in the corner, still in that decaying wedding gown. Her eyes were weeping black. Her fingers trembled at her sides, and she was staring at me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She didn't say anything. She just watched. Then, slowly, she walked toward the window and faded through the glass like mist. My heart didn't stop pounding for hours. I called Irene the next morning. Her voice on the other end was sharp and filled with dread. "You spoke the vow," she whispered. "Didn't you?" "I had no choice," I said. "She was going to kill Lacey." "No one ends the curse by feeding it," she replied. "You didn't stop her. You gave her form. She's unrooted now and free to walk." That night, I returned to Irene's cabin. She met me at the door with a rusted lantern and a torn parchment she had found in her grandmother's journals. It had a sketch of the Willow Bride, long black hair, arms full of scars, a veil like shadow itself. But what terrified me was what was written beneath it. When the vow is made freely, the bride becomes the harrowed one shadow. She will not haunt the trees. She will haunt him. Irene made tea while I read, but my hand was shaking so badly I spilled half the cup across the table. "There's one way to end it," she finally said. "You have to break the vow, retract it, revoke it in the same place it was made, under the moon at the burn grove. And not alone. Why not alone? Because if you stand alone, she'll marry your soul before you can finish." Lacey insisted on coming with me. She said she had to see it through, whatever it was. We drove in silence to the old forest. The wind howled louder than usual, carrying something between a whisper and a scream. I parked the car at the edge of the trail. We walked with lanterns and salt in our pockets, the journal tucked into Irene's old satchel. The clearing looked different now. The tree was gone, but not forgotten. In its place was a sinkhole, wide and black, like the earth had tried to swallow the memory. I stood at its edge and began the revocation, reading from the parchment Irene gave me. The air shifted. Branches cracked in the distance. Lacey's grip on my arm tightened. Suddenly, the world dimmed, as if something pulled the stars from the sky. She was coming. She emerged not from the shadows, but from within me. I felt her crawl out of my spine, twist out my breath. My vision blurred, my chest ached, and suddenly she stood across from us, pale, terrible, weeping. "You dare take back your vow." Her voice made the trees bend inward. I didn't know what I was agreeing to. I shouted, "You deceived me, and you broke me," she said, voice shaking. I waited in the cold earth. I was left at the altar, alone beneath the willow. I begged the gods of root and stone for justice. You came and promised. I was trying to save someone. Her eyes went wide with rage. "And now you want to leave me again?" She reached forward. Lacey screamed, and the ground around the sinkhole cracked. Hands, dozens of them, ghostly hands clawing up from a pit. I recited the final line. I revoke my vow made in darkness. I unbind a root. I break the tether. The Willow Bride shrieked. The hands grab at her now, not us. She fought, her veil unraveling, her gown tearing like smoke. She screamed my name, not with love, not with sorrow, with curse. I will follow your bloodline until one says yes. Then she was pulled into the pit. The earth trembled. And then silence. It's been months. The veil no longer appears in mirrors. The weeping has stopped. Lacey moved to a new city, far from Maine. I stayed. Maybe out of guilt. Maybe to make sure no one else walks into those woods. Irene passed away not long after. She left me the journal. Her last note simply said, "Never say her name again. But there's something I haven't told anyone. The ring? The one I used during a vow? It wasn't gone. It's buried in my chest. I see in X-rays. The doctors say it's a shadow. A mistake. But I know better. And some nights, I wake up with soil under my nails. Some curses don't end. They evolve. I thought I escaped her. I thought I broke the vow. But the Willow Bride doesn't just haunt the forest anymore. She haunts time, blood, and legacy. And I was never a last. Life returned to normal. Or so I convinced myself. I went back to work, repaired the cabin roof, ignored the hollow ache in my chest. Even the town stopped whispering. Irene's death came and went without ceremony. Her cabin now sits empty at the edge of the woods, curtains drawn, chimney cold. But I kept the journal, and at night I kept hearing the ring. A metallic clang like iron on bone, always in the walls, or under the floor, like something buried was moving. I didn't tell anyone until I met Wren. She was a visiting anthropology grad student from out west. She came to research folk myths of Maine, and naturally, someone pointed her toward me, the guy who survived the Willow legend. I laughed when she introduced herself at the diner. She ordered black coffee and a slice of warm apple pie. She had green eyes, curious fingers, and a sketchbook full of dark drawings. We talked about curses. She mentioned the Willow Bride myth casually, like it was an old campfire tale. But when I told her it was real, she didn't blink. Did she cry blood? Wren asked, tapping her notebook. I stared. How did you know that? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She always does in the third stage. That's when she starts dream walking. She moves between memories, slips into the dreams of anyone connected to the vow, anyone with your bloodline. It's never really about the man who makes the vow. It's about who comes next. Something cold dropped into my spine. Why are you really here? I asked. She leaned closer. Because you're not the only one she married. That night, I reread every page of Irene's journal. One passage stood out. The Willow Bride was betrayed not once, but thrice. Her body was left. Her spirit was bound. Her name was whispered by cowards. Now, she seeks a bloodline strong enough to carry her vengeance across generations. The vow doesn't end with refusal. It passes. I remembered what she said as she was pulled into the earth. I will follow your bloodline until one says yes. But I had no children, no siblings. My parents were gone. Wren wasn't my relative. Was she? Then she told me the truth. Wren's mother was from this town. Her name was Marla Hayward. My jaw clenched. Marla was my high school girlfriend, the girl I left the night I first encountered the willow tree. We never spoke again after that night. Marla moved west. She had a daughter. Wren. I didn't know, but the curse did. She started whispering to me when I was 13. Wren said. At first, it was in my dreams. Then in reflections. I thought I was going insane. And you still came here? She told me I had to see where it began. Then my blood would know. She looked at me across the flickering candlelight in my cabin. She told me if I say yes, the pain will stop. No, I said sharply. She's tricking you. It's how she feeds. Wren's eyes shimmered with tears. But what if I'm already hers? That night, we heard the music. It drifted in from the woods. Faint violin notes, off-key, sour, haunting, the kind of sound you only hear underwater or in dreams. Wren stood entranced. Her eyes turned glassy. She's calling me. I grabbed her wrist. No, we break this. Now. I remembered Irene's final note in the journal. A desperate scribble on the last page. If she reaches the vessel, she can be sealed. But it must be done before midnight. In the Willow Crypt. The crypt. I had only heard about it once. A legend about an ancient burial site beneath the original grove, sealed by stone, hidden beneath the oldest roots. We went at once. The storm had started again. Wild winds and slanting rain. Lightning forked above us as we reached the grove. The pit where the tree once stood was wider now, yawning as if waiting. I carried salt, matches, the journal, and an old iron mirror, the only thing Irene had told me could show a spirit's true form. Wren followed behind, shaking. At the edge of the pit was a stone door, ancient, covered in runes. We pushed it open. Stale air poured out like breath from a grave. The crypt was a spiral. Stone stairs carved down into the dark. Each wall etched with images. Brides hanging from trees, roots growing through skulls, veils woven from thorn. At the bottom was a chamber, a stone altar, and above it, her veil, hanging like a spider's web. Wren stepped forward. Her hands trembled. Her lips moved. She wants me to wear it, she whispered. No, I said. That's how she enters you. But what if I already belong to her? Wren whispered. What if saying yes ends it for both of us? I took her hand. We ended by facing her. We placed the mirror on the altar. I opened a journal. I began the ritual. The veil moved. It twisted in the air. It wrapped around Wren's shoulders. She screamed. But it wasn't fear. It was rage. She's here, Wren said, voice layered with another. She's inside me. The crypt shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then she stood before us again. The Willow Bride. But this time her face was mine. Not exactly. A twisted version. Hollow-eyed. Broken. You promised, she said, voice echoing off the stone. You made a vow. No, I said. I revoke it. I will haunt your bloodline forever. You already did. I turned the mirror toward her. She gasped. Her form shimmered, unstable. She was unraveling. Wren recited the final line. I return you to the roots. I end the vow. I break the soil beneath the name. The crypt split. Light burst from the mirror. The veil burned in white fire. The Willow Bride screamed, and this time there was no vow to save her. She collapsed inward like ash caught in wind. Gone. It's been a year. Wren returned home. The whispers stopped. She's writing a book now, about generational trauma and forgotten myths. I kept the journal, sealed in a lead box. The veil never returned. And yet, sometimes when the wind hits the old grove just right, I hear a violin. One single note. Off-key. Not a warning. A reminder that when we ignore the past, it doesn't vanish. It waits. The end.